to Donna's Next Cooking Delight. Today I'm going to be using the many zucchinis that have been blossoming in my garden. It's the peak of zucchini season. I've been getting on average almost 2 or 3 of these every day of various sizes. Sometimes I think they grow overnight. But I'm going to use today's opportunity to make my favorite recipe, which is chocolate zucchini cake. So it's a great dessert, it freezes well, and for the chocolate lovers out there, it's got ample chocolate. Once I picked my zucchini, I washed it. I then take my grater, using the rough side of the grater, and I grate the zucchini into fine little strips until I have 3 cups. And I set it on some paper towels so that it can drain and it removes as much of the moisture, because zucchinis are very moist vegetable. So I let it sit on a paper towel for a few hours while the moisture drains away so that it doesn't water down my cake too much. The recipe for this cake comes from my keepsake recipe collection, which is where I keep most of my recipes that I've inherited from my mother, and is also the one that I use the most frequently. So for our chocolate zucchini cake, the ingredients call for 2 1/4 cups of sifted flour, a 1/2 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder, which is the dry cocoa powder, a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of salt, 1 3/4 cups of granulated sugar, a 1/2 cup, which is equivalent to 1 stick of unsalted butter, and it should be at room temperature, a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, 2 large eggs, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, a 1/2 cup of buttermilk, and then you're going to have 2 cups of grated unpeeled zucchini, which is probably, if you're buying them in the store, about two medium ones, but in my garden 1 is sufficient. 1 6-ounce package of semi-sweet chocolate chips, and I prefer the dark chocolate chips, and 3/4 cup of chopped walnuts. My flour, which needs to be sifted, is done by a sifter that I inherited from my mother. This was probably made and is popular from the 1940s, but it's still functional for me, and I continue to use it to sift my flour. And as you can see, for my nuts and chocolate chips, the nuts needed to be ground, and I've gone through several nut grinders, but this one has lasted quite a while, and I use it to grind my nuts. You just merely put the nuts in the top, turn the handle, and the nuts come to the bottom, and it's got a predetermined measure so you can know exactly how much you have. This buttermilk is in a Ziploc bag because you can freeze buttermilk, and so when you buy a quart of it, and most of the recipes only call for a 1/2 cup or a cup, and you end up having 2 or 3 cups left over, you can portion them out and freeze them for future use. So this has been previously frozen buttermilk. When I start to blend the ingredients together, you alternate between liquid and dry ingredients. So the eggs I add to the buttermilk so that it becomes part of the liquid ingredients that I then will pour in later in the process. Okay, I need to blend the eggs and the buttermilk together so that as I'm pouring them in to the dry ingredients, they're already blended together and will blend and pour easily. All right, now I believe we're ready to begin assembly. We first add to our mixer, and this mixer is a good 10 years old, but you can't beat a Sunbeam mixer. Makes life easier. So you add your stick of room temperature butter, your sugar, and your vegetable oil. And those are going to be blended together at medium speed until they become light and fluffy. Once the sugar and the oils have been pulverized and the sugar has broken down as much as possible, we're now going to alternate between our liquid and our dry ingredients. Usually it takes about 3 each time a third will go in of each product, and it will be blended together thoroughly through each of the stages. And you want to do it on a low speed because the flour and the chocolate will go flying into the air. And once it's blended, you'll then start to add the liquid ingredients. Okay, and then obviously the final step in blending all these ingredients together is adding the zucchini. Some people just stir it in manually so it doesn't get into the beaters. So that's what I'm going to do, is manually blend the zucchini in. Okay. Now you're blending the zucchini in with the basic cake mixture. I don't know if you use cake flour, because this is a cake, if it would make it any different, but tastes just fine to me using regular flour, so you don't have to worry about using cake flour. Once you blend it all together, we're now going to pour it into our prepared greased pan. Now you can put this in a 9x13 pan and make it a sheet cake. I prefer to do a bundt pan because I think it just makes it look more attractive. So I'm going to only put half of the batter in the bottom of the bundt pan to start with. Even though this is a Teflon coated pan, I still grease it with Crisco and add flour to it. I have now added the first layer or bottom layer of the batter to the pan. And I don't put too much in because it's going to be thicker at the top. I now take my nut and chocolate chip mixture and I sprinkle it into the top layer. And I want to make sure that I have blended and have equal parts of chocolate chips and nuts in each section. Now some people put the nuts and the chocolate chips on the top, but because of a bundt cake, when you turn it upside down, it'll end up on the bottom. So I put it in the middle and it tastes just as good. So I've added my nuts and chocolate chips to the mix. I'm now going to place the rest of the batter on top of this. And don't worry about getting batter on your fingers because you can just lick it off and enjoy a little sampling to make sure it's going to be good. You want to get it as level and even as possible, but it'll find its own way. And your cake now is ready to be put into a 350-degree oven that's been preheated and baked for about 50 minutes. if you have an abundance of zucchinis, there is a zucchini cookbook in which you can have multiple uses for your zucchinis. This is everything from appetizers to side dishes, maybe even an entree, and of course other desserts. And there's always zucchini bread. And now our cake, having rested for about 4 hours so that it's completely cooled, is ready to come out of the pan. So I'm going to make sure that it's loosened up sufficiently so that it will fall freely. I put my plate on the top and flip it over. And it comes out of the pan, clean as a whistle. And now I'm going to put the finishing touches on it. You can put any kind of topping. If I had some chocolate sauce, I might put chocolate sauce on it. I just use some simple white powdered sugar to just give it a little kind of a sheen and make it look good. So I use my little sieve. And here's our finished cake with the powdered sugar and all of its wonderfulness. So. Anyhow, as you can see, we have the nut and chocolate chips in the center there. We'll take a taste of it. A great way to get your vegetables and have wonderful chocolate at the same time. So the next time you have some leftover zucchini or an overabundance, think about making a zucchini chocolate cake. And I hope you like this video, and if you want to see more of my cooking demonstrations, check out my other videos on YouTube. And if you have to, make some comments in the section and let me know what other recipes you would like to see me whip up for your culinary pleasure. Go hug the star. Good job.